All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Could we please have roll call?
Yes, you may. Councilmember Shacker is absent. Councilmember Perkins.
Here.
Councilmember Phillips.
Here.
Councilmember McCafferty.
Here.
Councilmember Armstrong.
Here.
Vice Mayor Granillo.
Here.
Mayor Miller.
Here.
And our town attorney is present.
All right. Presentation, discussion regarding the introduction of town street maintenance and cross-section maps.
But they're big ones. So thank you, Mayor, members of council. Some of you may have seen these before. I've talked about it at least in Roads and Streets Committee and may have even introduced it here at council as a preliminary introduction. But I wanted to bring this proposal to you as part of an effort to better inform citizens of which roads we maintain, which ones we don't. So we can be straight on that with everybody and get it going from there. And what we're proposing is to accept this map as the official street map of the town of Chino Valley. And then after that, if someone wants to bring a street into town maintenance, it would come to council for a vote. And that would usually require the standard improvements such as paving, drainage, those sorts of things. And so each street from here on out would have a separate vote, much like we did for Heritage Point. We accepted that, brought that before council to accept that, the completion of that subdivision for maintenance. So what we've got here is a map of all of the streets in town, and staff worked on it for quite a while. The green streets are ones that we currently maintain, and the pink ones are ones that are not maintained. And right away sometimes exists, sometimes doesn't for both classifications. So that's one thing we wanted to show here in some of these slides, is maybe zoom in on a couple areas and show you some streets and let you take several weeks to look at this, maybe bring back your comments and suggestions, make final changes, and then bring it back as an action item. As you can see here, all the pink streets are the ones that the streets crew currently does not maintain. We've got some roads that have right of way. One big example, if you look in this area where this is Chino Meadows Unit 3, and it's been platted for 40, 50 years now, since the 70s. But the streets have never been fully developed. There's houses on Shoshone and Crow and a portion of Cottonwood that the town maintains. But the rest of that subdivision, it may have been bladed once when they laid it out and hasn't really been touched since. We've got other areas right next door to it. Liberty Lane is one that some portions you would think we have right of way and should maintain it, but that right of way was acquired for the sewer line. And that dirt road sometimes is inside that right of way, sometimes it's not. So we currently don't maintain that road. And there's been a sign up for 6 or 7 years that says no maintenance. Granite Creek is another one that back in the 90s, people dedicated right of way to get their building permits, but maintenance wasn't really considered at the time. So maybe half of Granite Creek has the right of way. It's kind of checkerboarded, but we don't maintain that road or any of the side roads off of it. There's several other roads like that in town. One we get calls on every now and then is Reyes Road off of 1 West. The east-west portion, there's some right away, and it actually extends further east to where there's no road. But once you go north, there's no right of way. So it's a hodgepodge. But I didn't know if there was any streets council wanted to talk about here and maybe have us take a closer look at. Like I said, we can provide copies of this map. It actually prints out 3 foot by 4 foot, but we can print out that big if you want it and take a look at it and see. Any questions or discussion?
Are any of these purple streets, are any of the purple lines privately owned?
Yes.
Or are they all, okay, so some of these, we have easements, but they're not dedicated.
Right.
Okay, so is that true of all these, most of these purple ones? Or pink?
Most of those are simply easements, if that.
If that.
But there is, I just wanted to let you know, there is some right of way, but for the majority of the streets, there's not right of way. And again, even some of the green ones, we don't have some or all of the right of way on even some of the main roads in town,
Okay, thank you.
which we need to work on in the future.
I'd like to see the blown up version and have a couple of weeks to study it and then come back and remark on it.
That's the intention. I'm afraid this will be a very short study session, but yeah, some roads, if I could, just like Coley Court up here on the top left, that's an example of just an easement.
It's a
I think
driveway.
Bacon Lane may have some right of way.
None of these
that's by
pink
you,
lines
Bacon Lane,
were
doesn't it,
dedicated
Bacon?
like this, like in the
Yeah.
last 5, 6, 7 years, right?
Correct.
So this is all like prior Frank era stuff
They're-
potentially.
They're old legacy roads mostly.
Okay.
Sorry, Frank, how difficult, when you print this out, would it be to tell us why they're pink versus it being a privately owned road or a
Well, the
right-of-way issue or,
short answer is
Utilities.
because we've never maintained them before.
I'm sorry?
The short answer is because the pink or purple roads haven't historically been maintained. The most you might get is some of the citizens say, well, you used to give us a courtesy blade every now and then. And that's kind of the bane of my existence, because that means that it wasn't supposed to be maintained and we shouldn't have been in there in the first place. And if we went in there, we weren't supposed to go in there.
Well, I'm just noticing a lot of these roads, like Whippalawiki down there in Yavapai Estates, Whippalawiki. And I've been to Hawaii now, I can talk like
Yeah,
that.
okay.
And then
Gotcha.
that
Understand.
Chiricahua, those roads aren't even there.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying, is something that would,
Yeah, we could like label the roads that are just on the map and not there, and then the roads that are there but aren't dedicated, and then there's some roads that are there and dedicated but not maintained. Do you want that sort of breakout?
yes.
It's kind of
Okay.
a legend goes along with what's
Yeah,
what.
just so we can tell.
It will take a while, but we can
Because this
work on
map
that.
doesn't really tell me a lot, other than some roads are pink and some are green.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're pink.
Now, if we do that for the green roads too, that would
No, not the green. The
Okay.
greens were maintained by us, correct?
right, but we don't necessarily own
necessarily.
all of them.
I think, in my opinion, just the pink. Does council agree?
Got my vote.
We don't,
Can't vote. But
we don't know the green. We don't own the green roads.
Yes.
Not All
We don't
of 'em.
maintain them all.
we maintain them all.
We maintain them all, but there's a lot of easements in there as well
Yeah,
that we
including
maintain.
like portions of 3 North, 1 West,
So
Reed Road,
on those, how come you didn't put them in pink since they're
because we maintain them.
This is just what
Just
the
non-
town
okay.
maintains.
That's what I'm saying. The question of whether there's right of way or not is a much bigger issue that I don't know if we have the staff to be able to handle that. That's more of a GIS department.
I'm really
whole
surprised.
department.
I'm sorry. I'm surprised we don't do commercial or industrial.
Is your mic on, girl?
Sorry. I'm surprised that we don't maintain commercial or industrial up at the north end of town,
That's correct.
3.5 north.
And Choctaw is also one. Choctaw actually has right of way, but we don't maintain it.
Or Adams.
Adams a dirt road. Yeah.
Hey, Frank, has there been people who have asked town to assume responsibility for some of the pink lines?
Correct.
And is there a reason why we would or would not want to pursue that action?
That's part of what I'm asking now. If there's some that staff is considering pink that council wants to turn green, that's what we want to know. If we want to, if you want us to start maintaining those roads, now would be a good time to set the bar.
Do you have recommendations of certain roads you think we should look at?
This is my recommendation
Oh, okay, no specific.
of which ones that, yeah, what we did is we went through with the street staff. Some of them been here many years. And this is our best shot from a staff level, because it's really kind of like folklore. It's just been handed down through the generations of the public works departments of which roads we maintain and which ones we don't. And this is our effort to actually document that to where we know for sure which ones we maintain and which ones we don't. And then if you want to get one maintained, you need to bring it up to current standards and ask council to take it over for maintenance.
So to clarify what you said a little earlier, it was that there's roads that we maintain that aren't dedicated to the town, and roads that are dedicated to the town that we don't maintain? Is that what you said? Isn't
yeah,
that kind of backwards?
Sadly, that's what I said. So, but it's a mixture. What I'm trying to say is it's a mixture for both colors that we have on this map. Sometimes we own to the center of the road. Sometimes we own part of the road. Sometimes it's all the way across. Sometimes we do own it like we should. Just say 1 west and 3 north. I know there's portions of that we don't own the entire roadway yet. It's just handed to us from the county when the town was incorporated. So typically we maintain all the roads the county maintained before us. And we haven't stopped that maintenance.
I think that's what I would like to see is, like, for instance, if you're going to tell me Bacon Lane was dedicated to town, even though I know it's not, just use it for example,
Okay.
that it's dedicated but not maintained.
Yeah, there might be
Vers-
portions of right-of-way there for a lot of these roads. So
I just think that would be easier for us to make a decision. Am I misspeaking?
No, some kind of a
Not for you
glossary
too,
that
Annie.
tells me what's what.
I agree.
that might be a Herculean task to find all the portions of the right-of-way.
And Frank, I don't even know if we have the technology to put that kind of map in place, or anyone who could run that technology right now, a GIS person,
Right. There are people.
yeah.
So that's the rub is,
I think we could get you in some generalities that help you at least make decisions. If we can see there's a big reason for that one, that
Well,
it's,
you
it's
said
just an
Choctaw
easement.
was dedicated.
the county GIS shows it as dedicated.
Well, see,
It's
to me, if
town
it's
right-of-way.
a dedicated town road, we should maintain it.
Well, all of Chino 3 is also dedicated by plat.
Chino 3?
This area
Oh,
here.
Chino Meadows 3. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Chino Meadows 3.
Okay.
And
Well,
portion-
Yep,
and-
there's no roads there, right? Or they're
They're
there,
not
but
there yet.
they're not
But-
used.
But it's a right-of-way. That's where I'm saying, just because we have right-of-way doesn't, Andrew, is there a lawyer way to say this? Just because we have right-of-way doesn't mean there's a roadway to maintain? Or that it's been accepted for maintenance?
Yeah, I don't think there's an easier way to say that. If they haven't improved the road to the town standard, the town hasn't accepted the road, the town isn't responsible for maintaining it. That's what your subdivision ordinance and your general improvement plan.
So that's what you're saying about Choctaw. It's dedicated, but not to town standards.
Right.
See,
And,
that's part of the story got left out.
oh, I thought I said that.
You might have, but I missed it.
No. Same with Granite Creek. Portions of Granite Creek, in the best of my recollection, with a lot of these streets that have right of way but are just dirt trails that aren't maintained, date back into the 90s when I'm assuming the town said you need to dedicate a portion of right of way before we'll issue a building permit. And so their frontage in front of their house, they gave up 25 feet of right of way to get a building permit, but it may or may not connect to anything. And it was never asked to be improved to a street, just the
Grand
right
Creek's
of way.
been closed long, long time,
But it's got right of way on it. Portions of it have right of way.
but it's not up to town standard.
Right. None of these roads in the pink or purple are up to town standards.
Now, Frank,
That makes it a little easier.
do we have the manpower to take them on?
That was my
And
No.
Cost.
And the
And
cost?
the cost, that was exactly
we
what I
have-
was thinking.
Can we? And like Andrew said, are we obligated to take them on?
That, no, not to my knowledge, that we're not obligated to take them on. Wherever I've worked before, we've always had roads that were just paper subdivisions or dedicated. If you're saying if there's right of way, should we maintain it? And everywhere I've ever worked, there's been cases where there was public rights of way that weren't necessarily roadways. So I don't think that's out of the norm to have that. It's not ideal, but it's not out of the norm.
Mayor and Vice Mayor and members of the council, it's really actually pretty common in places where you had a lot of platted subdivisions that have never been developed, have never actually had the improvements done. Platting a subdivision just puts paper, pen to paper and creates a box on the map. But what it doesn't do is create any of the improvement plans that go along with it. And it doesn't then implement the improvement plans that would get something up to standard for the town to take, just like drainage features and streets and, dry or wet utilities, all of that stuff. I mean, that's why you have places, like Chino Meadows, there are paper subdivisions, but they haven't, they just threw a bunch of lines on a map. They didn't actually account for drainage. They didn't, dedicate any of the drainage ways. They didn't improve the streets. They didn't do anything. So if we were to try and build infrastructure in those spots without the infrastructure plans and the actual, it's kind of a harsh way to put it, but the real plans, the real subdivision, you would be redesigning the whole thing for them.
Right, and as it is over on Chino Meadows 3, there's no power, there's no infrastructure at all there.
Correct.
So it's be a waste of resources.
Correct. And right. And the other big case where you see a lot of these unmaintained roads is where there's simply just some sort of easement or trail without any sort of right of way whatsoever. That's a little easier to explain to people when they call in and say, why aren't you maintaining my road? The reason they may have a street sign is our code allows for any street or easement that has at least 3 addressable parcels or 3 addresses on it can get a street sign. Per our
Can or
code.
shall?
Can.
So it's cheaper to put up a street sign than take it over.
So yeah, you can request a street to be named if there's 3 addresses on it, but it doesn't have to be town maintained.
Frank, go ahead.
Go ahead. If John Q. Citizen comes in and says, hey, in 1995, I gave you 25 feet of right of way and you've never done anything, how come? We tell him to see you? Because I can't give him that answer.
I get that question a lot. So,
Okay.
and right now, that's what I'm looking for is an answer that says something other than because Frank said so.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
the
passing
attorney
the
backed
buck.
him up.
Right.
Passing it up.
Frank said, the
Because
attorney
Tom
said
said so.
okay.
Yeah.
And I should have had the code. There's a section of code that talks about a street map for the town. And do you remember where that was that I sent you? I thought it was in the charter, but it's not. It's actually in the town code. But we can bring that back.
Frank, are any of these pink lines up to standard today that we have not assumed responsibility for yet?
No.
Okay. So until they bring it up to speed to town's satisfaction, we shouldn't even consider assuming responsibility for it.
That would be my recommendation. Of course, council can vote, but my recommendation, if someone came with a dirt road and said we should maintain it as a dirt road, my recommendation to council would be that no, it needs to be brought up to the current construction standards before it's accepted, and then you could
Okay.
override my recommendation if council sees fit.
Are there exceptions, Frank?
Right.
To,
Well, if a road is dedicated but can't physically meet the standards?
Well, that would
You
be.
understand my reference?
Yeah, there's.
My driveway is my reference.
Well, yeah, and as Councilmember McCafferty likes to tease me about, as an engineer, my answer is always, it depends. So each
Okay.
case will be unique, so I can't say in absolute terms that would be my recommendation, but for 99% of the time, it would be. But if there's some sort of topography or geological anomaly that prevents it, I would bring that to council, and so we have an informed decision on that case.
You got anything else, buddy?
No, I'm good.
How about down here?
So, and it's really hard. Like one recent one we had is Outlaw. We've never touched that one before,
Mm-hmm.
but there might be right away on it, I think. So we can try and come up with some of the major ones we get calls on. I just don't know if it would be a complete list.
No, knowing that they're not up to town standards kind of trumped my dedication.
Right.
I didn't understand that.
The sad part is several of the roads we maintain aren't up to town standards either, but I think you're aware of most of those. So
We're working on it.
yeah, right. As budget and schedule allows. So doing more than we used to, I can say that much. The other, if we want to move on, I do have, and I think council's seen this before, just want to make sure we have this in front of you so that staff's not going off sideways. This is our street sections that we put together for when developers come in, want to make them improve the streets to these standards. And if Andrew lets me, I want to actually make them start repaving the existing street. Can we do that if it's not a current maintenance standards? We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that later. So, I have a lot of wishes as engineer. I don't always get what I want because you can't have everything. But so this is what we want. Basically, most of this map you'll see between 1 east and 1 west is more of your urban section where we're looking for more curbs and gutters. The kind of yellowish orange the lower traffic streets would include a section for bike lanes and just regular sidewalks, but where you've got more traffic in the middle of town, you see the kind of dotted lines, and that would create a multi-use paths that would be up off of the curb and gutter and get the bicycle traffic off of the road where it's safer. If Perkinsville 44 ever finishes, you will see a section of 10-foot multi-use pathway in front of that subdivision. And there are bonds that say that it'll be finished. So when they come back, they'll finish out Perkinsville Road. And it'll have a 10-foot multi-use path on the north side of it. So that's an example there. And then the blue sections is our rural sections, which is your typical road. We are adding a 5-foot shoulder to the normal roadway you see, which will give you room for cars to kind of get off the road if they need to, trash cans, that sort of thing to save the road. And if people are walking, gives them a little safety from the traffic. But it's not full-blown sidewalks. And there are also the dotted lines in the rural sections of town are unpaved trails. It's a 10-foot pathway. It's just not concrete. It's just gravel or some sort of surface that would facilitate travel and even equestrian use in the more rural parts of town. So that's kind of what we've got there, and just wondered if there was any comments on that. Some of the green sections really haven't been decided yet, and it may depend on the development. Like 4 North is a commercial road that's going to possibly feed Old Home Manor, depending on what's done out there. So we're kind of holding that back to see what the development looks like, to make changes to the section. Some of the sections of 1 West are just like through Appaloosa Meadows. It's got curb and gutter, but no sidewalks. but it's already built, so it didn't really fit into any of these molds. So that's why you might see some of those special green roads is either the development hasn't been fully decided on to know what they're going to be, or they're already existing and kind of in between. So, but it's a pretty good plan, and we worked on that with planning and development was a big one in this, and we did this even prior to the general. Yeah, it was. We worked on this even prior to the general plan, and I think I may have brought it to council before. I don't know if all the council members were here seated when. That's how long this has been around. So we'd probably include this with the town maintenance map so that it's got documentation as council accepting that for both of them is what we'd look for there.
Anything on that? Any?
No.
How about over here?
Nope.
Okay.
All right. So that's a pretty short meeting unless you've got any more questions or comments or.
Okay, what about a motion to adjourn?
Don't need one.
We don't?
Sure.
Okay, then we're adjourned. How's that?
For 30 minutes.
What? I'm confused.
What's going on here?
Are we adjourned?
You don't have to have one. If you want one,
No. She's looking at
they're looking at each other.
Just in case